Hello and welcome to another Ourdadsstamps video. For today's video I'm going to talk about the stamps of South Africa before the Union. So that is the stamps of Cape of Good Hope, Natal, Orange Free State, Transvaal and Zululand. Anybody with an interest in stamps knows about the Cape of Good Hope triangles. They were the first triangular stamps ever to be printed, and they were issued in September 1853. Initially it was a penny red and a fourpenny blue, and later on a sixpenny lilac and a 1 shilling green was also added. There were several printings made of this particular stamp, and it pays to know which printing you've got, but all of the printings are valuable, especially the mint ones. The ones to really look out for are what's called the woodblock engravings. These occurred because there was a shortage of the 1 penny and 4 penny stamp, and a local printer, Solomon & Co, supplied over 100,000 of the penny and 100,000 of the 4 penny stamps. These were actually made up of individual engravings which were then stuck onto a piece of wood, hence the name wooden block printings. There were 64 stamps to a sheet, but after printed it was discovered that 2 were accidentally placed in the wrong set. So there's a penny stamp was put on the 4 penny set and a 4 penny stamp was put on 1 penny stamp, meaning they're the wrong colours. These particular stamps are worth an absolute fortune. As I said before, the penny was a red colour. It was actually classed as vermilion for the woodblock, and it's catalogued at £17,000. So that's not a bad price anyway, and £3,000 used. But if you've got the wrong colour stamp, which has come out as a milky blue colour, it catalogues at £200,000 mint and £30,000 used. And the 4 penny stamp, which is in the vermilion red colour as opposed to blue, is similarly priced at £200,000 mint and £40,000 used. You're unlikely, certainly I'm never likely to get hold of one of those, and very possibly may never see one of those, but it's an interesting thing to look out for. The problem with all of these Cape triangles is there were numerous forgeries, and there are literally thousands of forgeries out there. So you need to be very careful when you're buying them. I've found 2 very good resources on the internet about detecting forged Cape triangles. One is the website Stamp Forgeries of the World, which I have referenced before and is very good for all types of forgeries, but particularly so for the triangles. And there's also another page on the South African Collector Society, which gives a lot of detail in how to detect forged triangles. I will leave links to both those pages in the notes below, but thoroughly recommend to have a look at those pages and if you're intending to buy some Cape triangles. You also need to get ones in good condition. I've had several of these stamps in my collection over time, but they've all had something wrong with them. They've all had thins or tears, no margins. Nice to look at, but without being a good quality stamp, they're really not worth an awful lot of money. The story goes that Stanley Gibbons built his fortune on these Cape triangles. He already had a counter in his father's chemist shop selling stamps, and 2 sailors came in with a sack full of Cape triangles, and naturally enough he bought them, and rumour has it that he paid a £5 for them, which was a considerable amount of money in those days, but wouldn't you like to get hold of a sack of Cape of Good Hope triangles for a £5 now? And one wonders what they would sell for if such a thing existed in this day and age. One thing to watch out for is don't confuse the Cape of Good Hope triangles with the South African triangles. In 1926, South Africa produced a stamp with exactly the same design, but with the word South Africa along the bottom, not Cape of Good Hope. And these are next to worthless, but it's to the novice collector, they could be easily confused with Cape of Good Hope triangles. So again, look out for this. In 1864 they produced a new design of stamps, and these were the familiar size, familiar shaped rectangular stamps. The design depicted a seated hope with a vine and ram, and the initial set was again of 4 stamps: a penny, 4pence, 6pence and a shilling, and again in similar colours to the triangles. Mint, this initial set is reasonably priced. You're looking at round about £1,000 mint. Used price not a lot at all, probably £10–20 at most, so you can certainly get hold of the used ones. You need to be careful as well, because there was another set produced in 1871 which looks almost exactly the same, but it was redesigned or re-engraved, and there's no frame line around the outside of it. So although they at first glance look identical, there is a difference. The second set in 1871 consists of a halfpenny, a penny, a 4pence and a 5 shilling stamp. And once again, these are worth round about £1,000 mint, slightly more used than the other set, probably £40–50 for the complete set used. So a nice set to get hold of. There are also further sets issued with different watermarks. So you can have sets with a Crown CC watermark, a Crown CA watermark, and also a cabled anchor watermark. The cabled anchor watermark set is probably the cheapest of the lot, and the set of 7 stamps is catalogued at about £400 mint and £10 used, so very, very easy to get hold of the used set. In 1902 they produced a set with King Edward VII's image on them. All slightly different designs, but the same image of Edward VII. And this set consists of 9 stamps running from a halfpenny up to 5 shillings. Catalogues £250 mint, £45 used, so not a bad price, not quite possible to get hold of. And as always, it's the 5 shilling stamp that commands most of that value, so up to a shilling you should be able to get hold of these quite easily. That was the last set issued by Cape of Good Hope before the Union of South Africa. However, there's quite a bit there to look out for. Various printings of the triangles, various printings of the seated hope, and a few variations of shade and watermarks. So quite a lot to look out for, and nice if you can get hold of them all. Natal's first stamps, printed in 1857, were like embossed postage marks on coloured paper. There were 5 values issued: a penny, 3pence, 6pence, 9pence and 1 shilling, and each of these is on different coloured paper, although the penny is on blue paper, rose paper and buff paper. They are quite valuable if you can get hold of them, but because they are just embossed images, these tend to flatten out over the years, and you really want one with good embossing to make it worthwhile. Prices range from £500 for the 3penny stamp up to nearly £10,000 for the 9pence stamp, so quite a lot of money to get hold of any of those. And being an embossed stamp with no colour other than the colour of the paper, it's very difficult to see the designs on them. In 1859 they issued more conventional stamps, and this was of the Shallon head portrait of Queen Victoria. The first stamps were just a penny red and a 3penny blue, but later a 6penny grey was added, and this colour was then changed to lilac. And then by 1869 an additional 1 shilling green was added, but this is a completely different design. There are several variations of the Shallon head design stamp. There's ones with no watermark, there's several different types and perforation varieties. There's paper different varieties, and there's also ones with Crown CC watermarks. So there's a fair bit to collect there. The cheapest of all those variations is the 6penny lilac with Crown CC watermark, but even that's £100 mint and £25 used, so they are worth looking out for and definitely collectible. I have seen quite a few of these for sale, but in very poor condition, so if you pay good money for it, you need to make sure you're getting one that's in good condition. In 1869, the whole set was then overprinted with the words postage, and there's 5 different settings for the postage overprint. And as always, these are quite difficult to distinguish unless you have all 5 in front of you, and it does affect the value quite considerably. Prices range from about £250 for an individual penny stamp mint, £100 used, up to the 1 shilling green is round about £40,000 mint and £4,000 used. A huge difference. Certainly the lower values, the pennies, are obtainable, but they are still quite expensive. And once again, I've seen these readily for sale, but with quite poor quality, so you need to look out and make sure you get hold of good ones. In 1870, there were 3 further postage overprints on these stamps, but these have postage running vertically up the side of the stamp rather than horizontally across the stamp, and these are worth nowhere like the same amount, around about £100–150 mint and less than £20 used. In 1874, they produced a new set of stamps depicting Queen Victoria. There were 5 different designs: a penny rose, a threepenny blue, a fourpenny brown, a sixpenny mauve colour, and then a larger format 5 shilling rose. There are also colour variations and perf variations on these stamps, but the whole basic set mint is around about £700 and used probably about £100, so definitely collectible to get the used stamps. In 1875, there were more postage overprints of the Shalon stamps, and I'm not quite sure why they kept overprinting them with the words postage. But once again, the whole set was overprinted with a different setting of postage, and these are fairly valuable mint, not so much used, but certainly not the same sort of value as the first lot of overprints. Between 1875 and 1900, there was a couple of more individual designs of stamps, mixed in with a lot more overprints with surcharges, postage overprints, and in some cases watermark changes. So there's a lot there to look out for and a lot of variations that can be collected. As with all the overprints, there's quite a few errors as well. Definitely a lot to get your teeth into if you want to be a serious collector of Natal stamps. Then again, in 1902, when they printed the Edward VII stamps, the original design had postage revenue on either side of the King's head, but in 1908 another set was printed with postage and postage on either side of Edward VII's head. So even with the Edward stamps, you need to look out and be careful which ones you get. The first set of Edward VII stamps in 1902 ran from a halfpenny up to 4 shillings. It consisted of 13 stamps. Catalogue value is not a huge amount. It's about £250 mint and £150 used. And half of that used value is on the 4 shilling stamp. So the used set is reasonably easy to get hold of. There was also a different design used for stamps running from a 5 shillings up to £20. Now these are a nice looking design, and up to the £5 are expensive but obtainable. The 5 shilling is £65 mint, £15 used. The £1 10 shilling, £750 mint, £200 used. But then you get to the £5 stamp, which is £6,500, the £10 stamp £18,000, and the £20 stamp £40,000 mint and £25,000 used. That gets a bit out of most people's price range. Oddly enough, with these stamps, the ones overprinted with specimen are actually much cheaper. Copies with the specimen on the £20 is only £700. Normally specimen stamps are more expensive, so in this case you may be able to get hold of ones overprinted with specimen, but getting the original is going to be very difficult. In 1904, the lower values were reissued with multiple crown CA watermark. This was just up to a set of 8 stamps, and again reasonable to get hold of, £200 mint, £100 used. And as I said before, in 1908 a further set was issued, but with the words postage on either side of the King's head rather than postage and revenue. These run from sixpence up to £1, and the mint set of 7 stamps catalogues at £600 used £500, so still a fair bit, but as always it's the £1 stamp where most of that value is. The Orange Free State produced its first set of stamps in 1868, and this consisted of 3 values: a penny, a sixpence and a shilling. There were several shades of each. For the penny there was a pale brown, a red brown, a deep brown, and for the sixpence there was a pale rose, rose carmine and bright carmine, and the shilling an orange buff and orange yellow. So the first thing you need to do with Orange Free State stamps is decide which of these shades that you have. The basic set of just 3 stamps is quite affordable. The catalogue value is about £100 mint and only a few pound used, so to get one of each isn't a problem. And in fact even the shades are not that much more expensive, so it's a very reasonable set to get hold of. And this in fact was the only design used for the whole of their existence. There was a couple of extra ones added 10 years later in 1878. There was a 4p blue and a 5 shilling green. And once again, these don't have a particularly high catalogue value. £15–20 mint and £3 or £4 used. To get the whole set of 5 stamps is still very easy. What happened after that is there were numerous surcharges and overprints of the same set over the next 30 years. And as with all overprints and surcharges, there are numerous errors and varieties that can be collected. So if you're looking at Orange Free State stamps, it's easy to collect the whole lot because there's only 5 stamps. But once you add in all the overprints, all the surcharges, there is a myriad of stamps, and as I said, a myriad of errors and varieties, which can range in value from just a few pound to a few £1,000. So you need to get a good catalogue to tell the differences between each and make sure you've got the right ones. In 1897 there was a colour change set using the same design, but just for the halfpenny and the shilling. The halfpenny was changed to yellow or orange and the shilling was changed to brown. Again, these are not exceptionally valuable, quite easy to get hold of the halfpenny ones certainly. And the 1 shilling is only £35 mint and a couple of pound used, so again not difficult. In 1900 the British occupied the Republic and all the previous stamps were overprinted with VRI. And once again there were 3 variations of the printing. There were many errors and varieties of each overprint. There were also surcharges put on several of them. So this provides a huge number of varieties that you can collect. And again, it ranges from a few pound in catalogue value to a few £1,000 catalogue value. The colony was renamed in 1900 to Orange River Colony. And initially they used Cape of Good Hope stamps overprinted with the new name Orange River Colony. But then in 1902 a new design was printed for King Edward VII. And then in 1903 a complete set of stamps was issued, ranging from a halfpenny up to 5 shillings. This set again is reasonably collectible. Catalogue value mint is only £250, used £50, so once again you can get hold of these quite easily. And that was the last set issued by the Orange River Colony. Transvaal issued their first stamps in 1870. Now, with all Transvaal stamps, you need to be very careful. For most sets, there were numerous reprints, some of them official, some of them unofficial. There were also numerous forgeries, so be very wary when buying any stamps from the Transvaal that it could not be genuine. The first set was a set of 3 stamps, which was a penny, a sixpence and a shilling. And these originally were imperforated. They were also available with fine roulette. The value of the imperf ones is £2,500 for the 3 stamps mint, and much the same used. The rouletted stamps are slightly less valuable, but still you're looking at about £700 mint and once again about the same amount used. There were several different reprints of this particular stamp on various different types of paper, some with imperf, some perforated, some with roulettes. So you need to look out and get a clear idea of which ones and which set you're actually getting. There was an extra threepenny value included as well, which usually comes in a lilac colour. The value of these stamps can range anything from less than £100 up to several £1,000 mint, and much the same used. So you need to be careful, and you need to watch out which particular printing you have. And as I said before, there are forgeries, there are unauthorised reprints around. So I would be very, very careful buying any stamps from the Transvaal. In 1876, the Transvaal was occupied by the British, and these sets were overprinted with the letters VR and Transvaal underneath it. Once again, with overprints, there were several different settings for these words. There were several errors made and variations, so there's a whole host of things to collect. Also, once again, the value of these can range anything from a few pound to a few £1,000. So you need to look out what you've got. You need to be very careful with what you've got. And you need to watch out for unauthorised reprints, forgeries. It's a whole minefield with Transvaal stamps. So as I've repeatedly said, you need to be very careful. And I would recommend only buying from a reputable dealer. In 1878, they issued a set with the image of Queen Victoria on it, which was a set of 7 stamps running from a halfpenny up to 2 shillings. These have a catalogue value of £650 mint, £300 used, so it's not hugely expensive, particularly used. The 6penny stamp was surcharged with the words 1 penny due to a shortage, and once again there were several settings of the 1 penny overprint. It also was occasionally printed in red instead of black, so like most overprints there was plenty of variation there for you. In 1885 a new set of stamps was issued after Transvaal becoming a republic once more. These range from a halfpenny up to £5, and apart from the £5 stamp, are reasonably priced. It's not too expensive to buy mint, and certainly very cheap to buy used. The £5 stamp, however, is catalogued at £3,500 mint and £250 used, so that's a bit more difficult to get hold of. Again, there were numerous overprints and surcharges with this set of stamps. And then in 1894 a new design was printed with a set running from a halfpenny to 1 shilling of 5 stamps, very, very cheap. The whole lot is £20 mint, £30 used. And then the following year, a very, very similar design, but there are subtle differences. And this has a set of 9 stamps running from a halfpenny up to 10 shillings. But it's still very collectible. The catalogue value of the set is £60 mint and probably £60 used, but £45 of that is the 5 shilling stamp. So without that, they're very easy to get hold of. In 1900, the British once again occupied the Transvaal, and these stamps were overprinted with letters VRI or ERI, and as always there are numerous variations on those overprints. The overprinted set are very easy to get hold of, with catalogues value of less than £10 each, mint, slightly more used in some cases, but still quite collectible. There is, however, the £5 stamp from the 1885 set that was overprinted as well, and this one is much more valuable, with a catalogue value of £2,500 mint and nearly £1,000 used. Finally, in 1902 a set was issued with King Edward VII's face on it. This ran from a halfpenny up to 10 shillings and consisted of 12 stamps. The catalogue value mint or used is around about £200, so quite a nice looking set and not too expensive. Higher values were printed a year later, which contained a shilling, 2 shilling, £1 and £5 stamps. The £5 stamp is particularly difficult to get hold of, with a catalogue value of 2,500 mint and £1,000 used, but it's a nice looking stamp. And then the whole set was reissued with multiple crown CA watermark, and that had 13 stamps running from a halfpenny to £1. Catalogues at £500 mint, £75 used, so certainly used values are easier to get hold of. There were also a few colour change stamps issued a few years later for a halfpenny, a penny, a twopence halfpenny, and these are very cheap to get hold of as well. And this was the last set issued from a Transvaal. One last thing to mention is the stamps of Zululand. In 1888 they used stamps of Great Britain overprinted with the word Zululand, with a set ranging from the halfpenny vermilion up to a 5-shilling rose. That set catalogues at around about or just over £1,000 mint or used. And then in 1894 they printed their own stamps, which is the standard Queen Victoria key type design. These run from a halfpenny up to £5. The set of 9 stamps, excluding the £5, catalogues at about £900 mint, £1,000 used. But the £5 stamp is catalogues at £6,000 mint and £2,500 used. So difficult to get hold of that one, but the others, the lower values certainly are okay, but as you get further up the scale, it's quite an expensive set to get hold of. Those were the only stamps issued by Zululand before it was annexed by Natal in 1897, and the stamps were withdrawn from sale a few months later. There are other stamps issued from various smaller states within South Africa, but they have become more of a specialised area, and I haven't really got scope to cover all those in this video. But I hope that's given you an idea of the early stamps of the South African region. As you can see, because it existed for such a short period, there are not a huge number of stamps, but they do tend to be quite pricey. So whilst it's possible to collect all the stamps of a particular country in this instance, it's going to cost you a lot of money to do so. But the number of variations and varieties available in all of those countries make it certainly an interesting area to collect. And I hope you've enjoyed this video, which is probably slightly longer than most of my videos, but we have covered nearly 5 countries in one video. So thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. This will be my last video of 2025. I've got a very busy December schedule ahead of me, so my next one will be next year. So enjoy the festivities of the holiday season, and Happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2026.